Welcome, everybody. I can't thank John enough. John is not only a brilliant beer writer and has been all over the world. He's giving me advice this year too about I'm going to go to Munich and Oktoberfest, and so he's giving me really good advice. Don't die there and don't step in vomit and other things that I'm preparing me for my trip to Oktoberfest. But beyond that, he is also editor of All About Beer. He is host of Drink Beer, Think Beer. If you do not listen to that, you should. And he's author of several books, including the Craft Brewery Cookbook. He is a regular at our competition as a judge. This year he missed, but he is a regular. So I'm so happy to have you here. Coming up, and we're sorry for the New Jersey comment this morning, but Jersey's okay. He was really mad about that.
Can you imagine somebody from Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth, no less, criticizing New Jersey? What? Upside down world. Thanks, Paul. Hey, Paul, everybody. It's you guys. I'm incredibly fortunate that I get to travel the country and the world and drink a lot of beer and hang out. And there's a lot of guilds and organizations out there, and I know I say this every time, but I really want to reinforce it. It's like you all are really lucky, because it's not just Paul, it's the entire staff, it's the organization, it's the way that the brewery members and your allied members are involved. New York State has this really incredible energy to it that I wish other states, and this is maybe the only time that I will ever criticize New Jersey, including New Jersey, would pay attention to, because our guilds, whatever it is just a wreck right now. And I keep saying to the folks, look to New York. I know we have this inferiority complex sometimes about New York, especially down by us, with the city and everything. It's the big shadow and everything, but you all are doing it really well. So congratulations, and keep up the good work, and thank you, Paul. I'll say for anybody else who came in, so this mug and this hat up here are up for grabs. Drop a card in. You can, much like Julie, this can be casual. You can drop stuff in if I say something. You can come up and drop it as I'm talking, I guess is what I'm saying. And then if there's questions along the way, just raise your hands and we'll kind of go from there. The quick thing on Oktoberfest, because you made me think of this, and this sort of leads into what we do at All About Beer, but one of our podcasts is called the All About Beer podcast, and M. Souter of Pints and Panels, who did your awesome pint glass for this year's Pint Days, co-hosts that with Don Tess, who's a perfectly lovely Canadian, and he's actually a really good guy. And they do the show every 2 weeks called the All About Beer podcast, and last 2 years ago we went to Oktoberfest with a bunch of other writers as well. And the vomit thing is very important if you've ever been to an Oktoberfest. So we're standing outside of the Hofbrau tent, and we're waiting to get in, and we're kind of around, and it's 11 a.m., and there's this big dude who starts walking towards us, and I see it happening in slow motion. He's got the glassy eyes, and the cheeks are starting to puff out a little bit, and he is walking dead on towards me and M. And all I can do in this moment is to push M away and me away like this. And M goes, she's furious. All of her Connecticut anger came out, and she got really mad. And all of a sudden, this guy just spilled where we were standing. And 11 a.m. on our first day at Oktoberfest, we're all in our smart clothes, and we're feeling, that would have absolutely ruined the day, probably my life at this point. So just watch out for the vomit when you're there. Anyway, really quick, this is me, All About Beer, founded in 1979. We're the country's oldest beer media brand. 50,000 visitors a month to the site. You can follow us on all of the social medias at All About Beer. We have podcasts, M and Don's, the Drink Beer, Think Beer one that I host, and then M and Don's podcast as well. So just search All About Beer wherever you get podcasts, and we always have something for you. I'm just throwing up, this is how long we've been around. That's the first cover with Paul Newman there in 1979. They put him on because he was on the Budweiser racing team, and it made sense to have a celebrity on your cover. It was a pretty, tenuous at best. And then Willie Nelson, that's issue number 3 of the magazine. And the only reason I put it up there is because on the penultimate page, they had these blind items in the back, and it said, "We've gotten word of a new steam brewery opening up in Chino, California called Sierra Nevada." We'll keep you posted as it progresses. First of all, it was Chico, not Chino, and it wasn't a steam brewery. So, facts aside, we were there first and before Sierra Nevada, and we've gotten a lot better at accuracy since then. As for me, I've been a journalist since 1996. I've written a couple of books. I'm also a Rauch beer enthusiast, so as folks well know. So anyway, we're going to be talking about media strategies for breweries and best ways of crafting your story. A lot of this is what Julie started to touch on a higher level that we can actually get into on a more micro level at this point. And so much of it starts with how you're communicating out to folks, how you are getting your message out. And in a digital age, in a world of 140 character tweets and stories that disappear after 24 hours, the press release still endures. And not just as a press release, but as a template for what you should be putting into your emails that are going out to your customers, as a template of what's going on your social media channels and what's going on on your social media, on your website. You should have a blog page on your website and going out to your emails as well. And this is the AP style, the Associated Press style, but it's just a good reminder of all of these things that you should have. The date that something is happening, your letterhead, your company logo, obviously, contact information. Craft beer can be so personal for folks, right? They want to know who to connect with. And as a journalist, it is incredibly frustrating when I get an info at. I don't know who I'm supposed to be reaching out to. I don't know if it's just going to spam. I don't know if it's just going into the ether and never to be heard from again. Have a designated person at your brewery. If it's the owner, if it's your marketing person, if you have one, if it's somebody who is actually able to respond to not only media inquiries, but also customer inquiries as well, and put it out there who that person is so that there's that personal touch to it, right? You don't get that with AB. You don't get that with Coors. You don't get that with a lot of the larger places. You all being small have that opportunity to forge that connection. So make sure that you have contact information, who that person is and how to get in touch with them on email. I know phone is not all that great. But press releases, as you're thinking about what you're going to be putting into your email newsletter, communicate this really well. Communicate this, with a title, with a headline. What is it? Your 10th annual Oktoberfest is coming up. You have a new beer release that's coming out. You're having a charity giveaway that's going to bring in, X amount of dollars. Whatever it is to get people interested, make sure you have that headline to it, and then a subhead offers just a little bit more context. 10th annual Oktoberfest coming up at the end of the year. This annual event draws 5,000 people to our tap room, or the ceremonial first tapping of the keg happens at noon on Friday. Like whatever it is, to just give people a little bit more context. And then from there, 10,000 breweries in the country. Not everybody is going to know where you are. Remind people all the time. If you're in Syracuse, if you're in Schenectady, if you're in Long Island City, no matter where you are, put that all the time on your branding. I get emails all the time from breweries around the country, and I'm like, I've never heard of this brewery. I'm sure they're great. I hope they're great. I don't know anything about them, least of all where they're from, because they haven't told me. So it's just a good reminder to constantly be reinforcing where you are, your sense of place as well. And then as you're putting all of this information out there, first paragraph text, you answer the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. All of that is important. Answer those questions as you're writing and as you get to writing of, communicating whatever it is, the event, the new beer release, the special festival, whatever. All having a clear idea of each of those things will help you write these pieces a little bit better. Will help you communicate not only to the media, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but also communicate to your fans, to your customers, to the people who are following you. Answer those questions every time, and it gets you in a better position to get people enticed. At the bottom here, you see just a lot of the blah, blah, blahs, the more details, the supplemental information, if there's historical context, if you're writing about a beer release, how often do you put this beer out? Why is this beer special? What ingredients are you using for this? How are you using it? Why should people care? All of that information, hit them in a good way. And then the last thing on this bottom here is the boilerplate, or company bio, or mission. Have a short company bio and then a longer one, but the short one that can go on the bottom, of telling people who you are, when you were founded, who you were founded by, why you were founded, what you care about. This is a great way of connecting with people, and it also helps remind you of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. The same thing about a mission statement as well. It can be really short. Founders had one back in the day of, like, we brew what we like and then sell the rest. It can be a very simple thing, but having a mission statement that guides you day in and day out, that gets you going to the office every day, that gets you on the brew deck every day, of why you're doing what you're doing for the people, for yourselves, for your employees, for your customers, can really help every single day get to where you want to be. And that's sort of like what Julie was talking about, that long-term strategy. It's not just hopeful. It's having a real idea of identity and how you want to get to fulfill that identity. So this is telling your story in a clear way, essentially, this press release stuff. Quickly tell readers what your news is about, what your event is about. Explain the history or the importance. You can tie it into larger events as well. This is really great with St. Patrick's Day stuff, with Oktoberfest. There's even, like news elements that you can get into as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if, everybody is focused on dry Irish stout for St. Patrick's Day, and you're making one, or red ale or something, you can be, people might be thinking about that large brewery this time of year, but come in for the local pint that's made with New York State malt, served on nitro like you're familiar with, and in a commemorative pint glass. Tie it into something that people already know from the larger world. Let other people's big $1 million marketing efforts help your small business grow. If it's, 7 million people are going to go to Oktoberfest this year. Well, the 4,500 that we're going to have in our parking lot for our 10th anniversary is a lot more intimate and a lot cheaper than going to Bavaria with all the fun and all of that. Tie it into stuff that people already know. Inspire people to get involved as well. What can they do? Every time that they're coming out, $1 from their pint for this particular night is going to a local charity that you all care about. It's going to fire relief or flood relief nationally. It's going to, something that they can feel good about at the end of the day while also feeling good drinking your beer. Use descriptive language, and we'll talk about this as well. And then again, include that company bio. At the bottom. Continuously remind people who you are and why you do what you do. As you're doing all of this, please avoid jargon. This is from an actual press release that I got. Our multi-brand sponsorship of the FIFA World Cup highlighted the quarter. I took the brewery's name out. They activated the FIFA World Cup asset for the 7th time with the most global experiential... I don't know what any of this means, but somebody at Anheuser-Busch got paid a lot of money to write this. I don't know what this means. This is nonsense, and I'm sure it was approved by a lot of lawyers. If you're working with your local soccer team, if you're working with your local soccer club, just simply say it and why you're doing it. We're big fans of soccer. Right now in Portland, Maine, they have Hearts of Pine, which is their new MLS team that's about to start. There's 4 or 5 breweries in the city that are involved, and they're just like, yeah, we've loved soccer for a long time. We're jazzed to be a part of this, and we're going to be making beers for it. We're going to be at the stadium with you. We're going to be cheering along with you. If you love soccer as much as we do, we have the beer that you want to be drinking. It's that simple. This regional consumer engagement and brand... No, just speak in plain language as you're doing it. Speak like you would at the bar to people. I can tell you that if I ever met somebody in real life who talked like this, I'd be thinking about cartoons in my head. Like, I just glaze over immediately. Again, with descriptive language, and this is when it comes to talking about your beers, properly communicating about your beers. Avoid being basic. Malt backbone, hoppy, traditional farmhouse. This is an American IPA is my favorite because I don't know what the hell that means anymore. Right? When I walk in, it's like, is it hazy? Is it clear? What's the ABV? Like, nobody knows anymore. Wild. right, is also fun. Like it's feral or something as well. Like, it's like, yeah, we just wrangled it out of the back and now it's in the keg and it's coming to your glass. And maybe that's true. Maybe you did harvest natural yeast in your backyard in a cool ship. Then say that. The ingredient providers, many of whom are upstairs, have spent a lot of time doing sensory analysis to say, our hops, if brewed this particular way, will give you aromas of peach ring or strawberry or cedar or pine or grapefruit or all. Use those descriptions. Make sure they're there. Trust but verify as you're tasting these beers and you're writing out the language. What are you getting in your own sensory from everyday life? Use real life food examples, right? It's the dry Irish stout, right? People will swear that there's coffee and chocolate in Guinness. There's not. It's all ingredient derived. But if you say to people like, oh, do you like coffee? Do you like chocolate? And they say yes. Like, well, hey, this dry Irish stout is for you. And it gets them there immediately. I do a podcast called Steal This Beer with Augie Carton from Carton Brewing, and we try to use as much descriptive language as possible. And sometimes it's gotten really weird, where we've used, flowers in bloom, like lilacs, dried lilacs, or, bathroom potpourri at your grandma's house. There's all these various things that come to mind when you're drinking the beer. And as you all are doing sensory, find out what those are. Find out what it speaks to you. The power of suggestion, as you all know, is so great. And if you give somebody something in advance saying, this tastes like Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal, but we didn't use Cinnamon Toast Crunch, or this tastes like, baklava, or this tastes, or whatever it is, it's going to entice people enough to go hunting for it and looking for it. And then if they find it too, they're going to be delighted and they're going to keep coming back to it. We drink first with our eyes. So as people are scanning through menus, make sure that you're not being basic. Make sure that you're being descriptive. Even if you have a small space on your menu, be as descriptive as possible. Avoid being basic. Let people read the things and get excited about it. This also just came up recently as well. Somebody's asking me like, yeah, but how do I describe lagers? It's like, good luck. Because after a while, like you can talk about crispy and you can talk about crispness and you can talk about, the color and all of that. The other way that you can enhance some of these things is by talking about where these should be enjoyed. If it's a rainy day in Albany and, you have a Czech dark lager on tap, put something on your board of like, this is the beer for today. This is the beer that fits the mood, fits the atmosphere, fits the weather today. Your Utica Club, your crisp lager, your cream ale, whatever it is, this is your tailgating beer. This is your Sunday picnic with cold fried chicken beer. This is your... Tie it into experiences as well, and it'll get people thinking about you in that way regularly. Talk about the beer. Avoid vague examples. These are all real things. American Pale Ale aged with Mosaic and Simcoe hops. A lot of people don't know what Mosaic, even though it's terrible, tastes like. I'm with Julie on that. She can bash Jersey, and I'm going to give her grief for it. She can bash Mosaic, and I'm like right there next to her. There's like 3 Mosaic beers that I like. Like the old school one where you got the blueberry and everything. Now everything is cat box to me, and I just can't. But again, aged in wine barrels for 9 months. What kind of wine barrels? Like be specific. Where'd you get them from? What kind of notes do you get? Dry hopped. That doesn't help. The live Brett. I was with my dad at a brewery once, and this was an actual description that was on a beer, and he's like, is it the brewer? Like what? I don't understand. It's like, no, it's Brettanomyces. And then I had to like go in and start talking about horse blanket, which just makes people angry because it's like, it's so much more than horse blanket. And it's like, I know, but it's, yeah. And then generous amounts of unique and flavorful hops. Name them. Tell us what those flavors are. Tell us what the hops are, sometimes there's some fun names, right? I saw John Siegel was walking around before. I don't know if he's in the room, but probably not. But, like anchovy. And he's so mad at Brian Strumke for naming it that. But, like, anchovy gets people's attention. And then it creates a conversation of, like, no, there's not actually small fish fillets in this. There are, it tastes like this. So the middle of the road, that's Weihenstephan in the middle. Our golden yellow wheat beer, fine poured white foam, smells of cloves and presses, banana flavor. So it's getting a little bit more into it. And then at the end, this is, I think, from Drake's Playdate, a juicy ale with notes of sun-kissed fruit, lemon, citrus, and melon. They tie it back into their flagship, which was their Dallas Blonde. They add the Medjool dates to it. It's got this tea presence, all in a fun, playful language to sort of entice you into it. So think about that as you're writing your beer descriptions. I can say, having judged the competition up in Rochester for the last couple of years, that when we get some notes sometimes and it's like, this is a brown ale. And cool, if it's just a straight up brown ale, that's awesome. But if it's in the experimental category and you're like, this is a brown ale, we're like, oh, what the hell? Or you go to, Untapped, and I don't fully recommend it, although shout out to Ollie today. But, a lot of the time the descriptions are up there, just felt like, I don't know, just say whatever and then go from there. Use your real estate that you have to really describe your beers as best as possible. So much of telling your media story and your strategy involves your staff training. Julie talked about this earlier as well. But in your space, in your tap room, you have tremendous real estate and a tremendous captive audience to share as much as possible. They are there for you. Use that to educate folks. So share info on your beer, including the ABV and the pour size. That's important as well. Tell the story of your building. If you're in an old gas station that you reformatted, if you're in new construction, if you're in a historic town building, or you're the fourth brewery to occupy a certain space over the years because they've all moved on to bigger and better things, tell that story. Let people get that sense of place when they're there, because it can help make the beer taste a little bit better. Your history is important, right? 45 years old now in the craft beer industry in America, 47, Jack McAuliffe, when he started, there's 2 or 3 pictures from his early days when he started. There's 2 or 3 pictures of Ken and Paul when they founded Sierra Nevada. There's, 4 or 5 pictures of Jim Cook back in 84 from those early days. Everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got the means to take pictures. Document your regular brews, document your staff, document your place, document your journey, and then share that. We'll talk about social media in a minute, but share that as well and keep it. Print photo albums. I was just at a brewery in Indianapolis. I don't know if anybody's going out to CBC. There's a cool lager brewery called Goodman House doing all lagers. And they're in this historic Indy 500 building where it was like engines or tires or racing, I forget. But they rebuilt this husk of a building and put this beautiful system in. They're making great beers. And when I sat down with them, they had an actual photo album, old school photo album, and were going through it and telling me their story. And it was visual, and it was such a great reminder that it is easy to print up photos from your phone these days. Have photo albums. Create them. If somebody says, at some point, you might lose, somebody might die in your staff, and you have these photos that you can go back and look to, or, remembering fun parties, remembering all these things that are not just on your phone showing up as memories on Facebook a couple of years later, tangible things that you can go back to, help remind you of who you all are and why you're doing it. And it sort of helps, tell your story a little bit better. Brand your social media. Make sure it's everywhere. Make sure, I have it on every slide. I was surprised, and I have to tell Julie this, that, she didn't have it until the very end. Like if I say something that's, off base, like, to all of you guys, like Mosaic is terrible. You all know exactly how to tweet that out and say, like, can you believe Hall just said Mosaic is terrible? And then tag me, and then everybody gets mad at me for it, even though I'm absolutely right. Make sure it's on your cans. Make sure it's right in, by your taps that people can see it. Make sure it's on your menus. I've seen some places where they've branded it into their tables as well. People are communicating on social media. You want them to follow you. You want them to be involved with you. Any place that you can put your social media handles, whatever you feel is dominant for you, you should be putting it out there quite a bit. Create signage for your brewery, tours, equipment, items of note. If you're doing tours regularly, that's awesome. but that's usually 12 to 2 every other Saturday kind of thing. When you're not there and when the brewery's not in use, have easels out if your brewery is visible to the public behind glass or something. This is a fermenter. This is where wort gets made into beer. This is our brew kettle. It holds X amount of gallons. Like barrels are great, but if you have a sign that you can remove, put it in terms that when my dad walks in and doesn't know much about beer, he's going to say, wow, that's 5,000 gallons of milk in that vessel right there. That's really cool. Things like that to give people a little bit more of an understanding of where they are and what's being manufactured in your place. Items of note, if you've won the Governor's Cup, if you've won major awards, have them where people can see them. If you took the time to enter into something, if you took the time to care about your beer being judged by people, I'm always sort of amazed when I walk into breweries and I see them in like the brewer's office. Like that's cool, and like they earn that. But share that with the world. Share that with people. Take pride. Like let people know. Like, oh, this is a big deal. This place has won major awards. If you have local artists, if it's a mural on your walls, if you've had, if you have art that is maybe not for sale or is for sale. Point people back to your community if it's local artists. Tell them where they can get in touch with this person if they really care about it. And again, going back to building history as well. Goodman House is a great opportunity or a great example of that. But if people are sitting in a cool place, a couple of lines on your menu, you're sitting in, what was once the town hall or once the county jail or once the, whatever, just to sort of like make people feel like, oh, that's kind of cool. Nobody ever thinks about the target, the building itself when they're walking through it because it's kind of soulless. Breweries are not soulless. Put some soul to your place. All right, so let's talk about some earned media. How do you get your message in front of people? So now, you know how to describe your beers, you know how to describe your events, you know what you're passionate about. How do you get earned media? So that is television, radio, websites, and podcasts. The first thing is really important is to know your local media. Know every TV station. If you watch the ABC affiliate every night for Jeopardy or the local news or whatever, and you're not paying attention to what NBC and CBS or Fox or anybody else is doing, start to pay attention. Most places on their website have contact forms, and we'll talk about how to, I'll just tell you how to do it. There's assignment desks. Typically, where a lot of information comes in and then it gets filtered out to reporters to fill up the nightly newscasts. Or same thing with radio stations as well. There's usually an input place where, it's a program manager, an events manager, or it's somebody who is responsible for collecting a lot of information and then deciding, what gets covered and what gets out there. Have a list of those places. Don't only know my email address, which I'll give to you at the end, or what Brewbound is doing, or Chris Shepard from Beer Marketers Insights, or BYO Magazine, or the publications, or websites that are still out there. Know your local beer blogs, know your local food blogs, know your local events calendar blogs, people who cover your town, your county, region, state as well. Anybody who will be interested in covering food and beverage, you should have a list of people that you're reaching out to with those press releases, with those what's going out in your email blast to talk about. Focus on local first. Try to get the people from your town, the media from your town and your region interested. If you're doing something really cool, like you have a truly special beer release that you think is just going to knock everybody's socks off, start reaching out to national media like me and other beer folks as well to get it on our radar. That's important. Focus on topical trends as well. As you start to get to know reporters or bloggers or folks who are interested in what you're doing, tie it into local events, right? We talked about or national events or topical trends. We talked about Oktoberfest, right? Like, hey, you started to hear about Oktoberfest, we're going to be doing one. Right now, everybody's talking about tariffs. So if you watch the nightly news, it's the news out of Washington, it's the news internationally and all of that. How can you get people interested in what you're doing? You can talk about topical trends. If you feel like these are going to impact you, if you've been making Canadian style lagers and now all of a sudden your Canadian malt is going to become more expensive, reach out to these local TV stations, these local radio stations that do news and say, hey, this big thing is happening national, but it's actually going to have an impact on us locally. and we'd love to be able to talk to you about it. You can come down to the brewery, you can shoot some video. We'll talk to you about like what this actually means for us. And it gets you involved in a conversation that's happening nationally on a local level and gets people paying attention to your small business, which is going to need all of the help that it can get going forward, right? We all know where things are going and where things are at right now. So whatever it is, right? A couple of years ago, Obama did the beer summit, and I think they had like a honey cream ale or something that they had brewed in the White House. And there's a couple of breweries around the country that also weirdly had honey cream ales around, and a lot of those just reached out and were like, yeah, hey, like what they're drinking, we basically have the same thing. We're going to do a beer summit too. And they got a lot of local coverage off of it. If there's something that's happening nationally that you feel like you can tie in, do that. Get people coming in for not just the beer, but because of your small local business. Focus on your events, obviously. If you're having an anniversary party, if you're doing a St. Patrick's Day party, Cinco de Mayo, like whatever it is, make sure that you're blasting that out to all of your local calendars, all of your local papers, all of your local stations that have community calendars and events and all of that, and long lead times as well, right? If you call me at All About Beer on Thursday saying, hey, tomorrow we're doing our 15th anniversary and we're going to have all this stuff, awesome. That's great for you. There's nothing I can do about that at this point. But if you had called me or sent me an email 3-4 weeks earlier when you actually still also knew that this was going to happen, maybe I could do something with it. Maybe your TV stations, maybe your newspapers can do something about that. Think about things far in advance. It's not only to sell tickets far in advance, but it's also to get awareness out and getting involved in all of these things. And then be flexible as well. I hate to say it, but if I call on a random, Tuesday afternoon because I've found great SEO on your website of, a honey cream ale that I want to write about because, the beer summit is happening, and I email or call or whatever. If media calls you guys and wants to give you guys free exposure, do whatever you can to answer the call and to give 10-15 minutes because it's going to pay dividends down the road. It's going to get you better exposure. I know it's busy. I know people are wearing 1,000 different hats, but to get information out there for free is pretty incredible and pretty important. So I say this every year or anytime I do any of these talks, but all of the words are great. And all the things that you can do to get your message out there. But nothing that you can say, write, or post can help you if the beer you make is of poor quality, infected, or just downright shitty. And I hate that I still have to say this in 2025. I hate that I still walk into breweries and I sit down as a regular customer and I put $8 down for a pint and I get diacetyl. Or I get something that is just like, I don't even know what it is. And it's like, yeah, but we're craft and we're edgy. It's like, no, this is infected and this is bad and you should rethink it. If you're not putting quality above all else, things are going to fail. If you're focused on your end product, right, and you're focused on making it as great as you can and understanding where you can improve, other things will fall into place. The rest of the business will run the same way. Put quality in, you get quality out. All right, social media, really quick, crafting an authentic and engaging presence without overthinking it. So what you want is storytelling that connects. There's so many breweries, there's so much noise on social media. To stand out, you need to be real. You need to create original content and tell stories and be consistent. Be real is really just being you. What's your vibe? Who are your people? Why are you doing this? Creating original content, I think, is important as well, right? There's a lot of trends that are out there. There's one, I forget who started it, but there's one where breweries were putting a can on a basketball and then dropping it, and then as the can went up, they would grab it and it'd spill all over the place. And I saw hundreds, if not thousands, of those breweries, and usually it was just the same one showing up in my feed. But somebody started doing it, and it was like, oh yeah, we got to do this too. I didn't learn thing one about those other breweries. I didn't know what beer they were doing. Yes, Paul.
Sorry, I want to go back to the be real part.
Yeah.
How do you feel? We all know the political climate that we live in now. How far would you go in that be real category? Because if you start picking sides, we always preach beer is bipartisan, but part of being real is this administration is killing us.
Yep.
All right, what are your thoughts about
In 2016, I was at a brewery in Iowa a couple weeks before the election, and there was prediction. It was like a cartoon. There was a Prius with a Clinton sticker next to like a F-150 that had a Trump sticker on it, and I walked in, and people were sitting next to each other, and they were having pints, and it was all very, very civilized. 2025 is not that anymore. If you feel strongly about your particular side and it is part of your identity, if you are raising money for charities and organizations that need it because the government is slashing them, if you feel like things are awesome right now and you're thrilled with what's happening in Washington, you can put it out there. You don't have to beat people over the head with it. I'm not advocating for breweries to go and say, yes, we're all for this or all for that. But if something is impacting you and you care about it personally, if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling a certain way, good or bad, and there's something that your business can do because of it, yeah, it's polarized and you're probably going to lose customers one way or the other, but it's also being real and authentic to you. And I'm not saying refuse service to somebody who walks in a red hat or somebody who walks in, with a Harris Waltz pin on their thing. I'm not saying go that far. Beer is still a great place to have a dialogue, to have a smart dialogue, because we can remember that it's the starting point for it. But right now, yeah, this administration is killing small businesses. It is killing people on trade. And there are a lot of people who don't understand that, who just don't get it at this point. So if you want to be out there and say, if you have to do a price hike in 4 months, and we're sorry that we have to do this, but this is why we're doing it, you're going to get people who scream at you on your social media, you're just buying into the hype, or, all that. But the reality is black and white on your page. And the more transparent you are, the more real you are. I think that's important. As a journalist, I am a registered independent. I work very hard not to take sides. But having covered this industry now for 20 years and seeing how much people have started to hurt in the last 2 months, I can't ignore it. And it breaks my heart. And I know it's breaking a lot of your hearts as well. And when you start to see local organizations that have been doing good for a long time, I saw library funding got cut yesterday. I don't get it. If you need to start doing fundraisers for your local libraries or your kids' schools because they don't have arts anymore or anything else like that, put it out there. You're going to get people mad at you, but then you're also going to get a lot of people, who understand and who are, coming out for it. So yeah, there's no great answer. But I don't think that we're in a place right now where if somebody feels strongly about it, that you can be muzzled. And you just have to be real and true to yourself. Yes, Jen.
Can you dovetail off of that?
Yeah.
Into unlike totally the opposite of you, there are some journalists out there that are going for gotcha, click through things, and how we can sort of train ourselves and get our language down, and be prepared. For not every journalist is doing their job, but sometimes you may end up saying something that's going to get stuck out there that you regret.
What I caution is speak carefully. Don't trust anybody. I trust yourself, but in many cases, there are people who are looking for that gotcha, or oh yeah, you're big on all of this, and you're gonna you're trying to let people in the country, or whatever it is, kind of thing. Having a very clear record of what you've said is important, and not getting, especially if you're talking to, this is great on social media. It's just a good rule, or life or anything else. Don't go too far down rabbit holes. You're never going to win an argument these days. So for me, I think a lot of it is just, this is who we are. This is why we're doing it. This is why this is important to us. And then if people start yelling at you, let them yell. It's just that kind of thing. And then with journalists, just or reporters or things like that, I think it's just, you can ask people to re-clarify questions. what do you mean by that? You know, like turn the tables on them a little bit. You know, I mean, I like pushback as well. I don't always know the right question to ask, so sometimes I ask things indelicately, I think, as people know. You know, but like, sometimes it's just awkwardness. So I don't know if I'm fully answering your question. I'm trying to think about this in real time as well. No, that's okay. Yeah, I don't know. Has anybody had an experience where somebody has asked a question and you feel like you got railroaded, like something went sideways on you?
I feel like that happens in a lot of reporting. Like,
Okay.
you know, we've been interviewed and we're like, oh, this interview's gonna be great, and it's like, oh, you just have like a clip of it and we put something else behind it, just because.
What's an example of that?
I think there was one time. This wasn't even about the Doherty thing, but I was being interviewed going on the train to go to the city, and it was about COVID times, and it was like, oh, like, do you feel safe or whatever, and they like wanting to be like, not even feel safe, but like, I was fine. So like, they manipulated the way things were said,
That's shitty.
put a B-roll of something totally different behind it.
Yeah.
And then, like, at first, I did actually get called the other day by Newsday about the tariffs.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of like, it doesn't really affect me because I don't really care. So, like,
Okay.
You know, right? But they were.
But raw
trying to get
ingredients,
something out.
yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to get something out. So I was like, at one point, I just stopped answering the questions because I'm like, how is this going to look? And where is it, like, what's the agenda that the journalist has?
Sure, and I get that. Hang on, and you know, the other thing too is, if I call you, right, or Newsday or whoever, you don't have to start answering questions immediately. There's no, you know, freedom of the press still exists, you know, for now. And, you know, like, you don't have to actually call me back. You don't have to call Newsday back. So if somebody calls you and you're unfamiliar with them, but you're curious, go spend 10 minutes on a website. Go, like, Google the reporter to find out, like, oh, like, you know, like, yeah, this, like, these articles seem fair. Like, this, like, it passes the sniff test, as it were. And then go from there. You know, I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, if you don't want to talk to Newsday, don't talk to Newsday. You know, it's, you know, if you don't want to talk to All About Beer, don't talk to All About Beer. Paul, I'll jump to you in a second, but yeah, in the back, yeah.
I just want to add on to what Manny said. We were actually featured in that article, the tariffs for raw aluminum, and then came to the brewery, news cameras, and all that. And I got to be honest, like, there wasn't really any bad pushback afterwards.
Okay.
Not good or bad.
Yeah.
They were pretty, you know, middle of the road. They just kind of given the facts. Like, you were listening. Obviously, watch your words, but
And
it's fine.
I think that that's part of it as well. It measured responses these days, or thoughtful responses, and, you know, I mean, facts can always be manipulated, right? Julie had a slide in her presentation today about population and number of breweries, and I said to her afterwards, I'm not quite sure that susses out the way that you think. Like, I would like to reevaluate that a little bit. But what I'm saying is, like, if you say, as planned, a 25% aluminum tariff based on what we have been paying, and here's our spreadsheets for the last 5 years, this will, if it goes through, increase us by X percent, which means, you know, like, you can math it out all the way. And, you know, and it's like, if somebody says, you know, yeah, but, like, aren't you angry at the administration? It's like, all I know is that in black and white, if this goes through the way that it is, like, you don't have to get into the political debate. It can just be, you know, our raw ingredients are going to go up. And if somebody tries to bait you into it, I mean, one, shame on them, but two, you don't have to rise and take the bait. And it's incredibly hard not to, right? But yeah.
One important thing, though,
Yeah.
is that they were asking questions about our distributors, and so I would definitely take caution in naming your distributors. Maybe give them a phone call. We did. We talked to them. We got some information. We were sure not to name who they are. And
Yeah.
keep their names out of it. You don't want to get somebody else wrapped into it. So.
And I, you know, with the podcast and everything as well, I mean, we do live to tape on all of our shows, but I've cautioned folks in the past where it's like, listen, if you're going to say something about your distributor, or, you know, somebody that you had a negative thing about, I'm running it. Like, I say that to people in advance. So, like, you know, I want people to be honest with me. I want them to tell good stories. I want them to, you know, to tell their truth and everything else like that. But I also don't want them to call me up like 5 days later and be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And it's like, well, no, you shouldn't have. But you did, and I warned you. And sorry, Paul, you had a...
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, maybe you can back this up.
Yeah.
The earliest pieces of advice that I got is that if you're being interviewed by a reporter, that you're never off the record.
100%.
And so you might think, oh my God, I'm really comfortable. I really love this person. And it was a great piece of advice because I've been tempted to kind of go a little bit further, but
I get that a lot. I get that a lot from folks where, you know, like they just start talking. It's like, you know what I do. You know my, like, this is, or you can't just say, and everybody's different, right? But I came up old school, right? In 1996, when I first became a reporter, like I value off the record and I honor off the record. But if somebody comes up to me and is like, off the record, and then immediately launches in, I did not verbally agree to that. Right? I did not say, yes, I'm off the record. Like, it has to be, you know, can I go off the record with you? And then I will always say yes, right? And then tell me the story. But don't just use that as the first sentence, comma, you know, here's what I want to tell you about my shitty distributor or whatever it is kind of thing. Because I never agreed to it, and now I know, you know, it's fair game. I'm not gonna screw you guys on that. But like, there's a lot of people who will. There's a question in the back, yeah.
Oh, I had a quick one. I had an interview a long time ago when I was at Resurgence. We were one of the newer breweries in Buffalo, and they asked about like how I felt about all the breweries opening up, and I said, you know, we all help each other. You know, our beers will get better, their beers will get better, whatever, as we all grow up. And in big black letters on the article, it said, Resurgence Brewing, our beers will get better.
I mean, yeah. You're not always going to win the headlines. Yeah. And in fairness, you could turn that around to a positive, right? They're always going to get better. I've had conversations with Vinny Chilurzo about Pliny, where every year they do what it's the younger, right? Is the special release. Every year he's retinkering it, he's refining it. When it comes out, he has the first pint, he has the last pint. He's like, how can this be better next year? He takes notes and then they implement it. So you can always be better. But I also understand that if you're watching News 1 at the end of the night and it's like, yeah, no, not great. So the last thing also just on this slide is just to be consistent as well. Have a plan for your social media. How often are you posting? Is it daily? Is it weekly? You know, what are you doing as well? I use Augie Carton as an example because I hang out with him a lot. But he does new canned releases every Wednesday, and he does these videos on his Instagram where, you know, he says, and I do believe him, that he hasn't tasted the beer off the canning line until he's live on Instagram Live. And he, you know, cracks the beer and he pours it and he talks about the beer's journey. But every Wednesday at noon, that brewery is doing that on Instagram Live, and it's getting thousands of likes, and it's like, and now the tap room is open, and come on down and get it. And you get people based on his level of enthusiasm, based on the beer, based on the day, the weather, everything else coming out. But it's consistent. I can time my watch to it. So make sure that if you have a social media plan, one, make sure you have a plan, and then two, that you stick with it, that you're it's not just like, oh, we should just snap this and do this right now. You know, think about it in advance. And it's better to be authentic rather than polished, right? It doesn't have to be the best lighting. It doesn't have to be the best, you know, like audio quality and everything else like that. But it should be you, your voice, your people.
I just have a question about correcting things that the media has gotten wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's been a handful of times where media has reached out to me for various stories, either on events or beer releases or whatever. And I'll go over everything, give them all the details, and you know, then I'll see that the story is out there, and it's like the times and dates are wrong, or they got the name of the beer wrong, or they're using a picture of the brewery from a decade ago, and it doesn't even look like that. So, like, what do you do to, because obviously, you know, media is great, we want to encourage them to keep reaching out, but if they're putting out wrong info, it's not super helpful.
If it's across the board, that's a problem. If it's one place that keeps screwing you,
Yeah.
like, stop using them and tell them why. You know, like, hey, you guys just haven't gotten it right. As soon as you see something wrong, right? Every now and again, like, I get something wrong and I will correct it. If somebody calls me up and they're like, you know, actually I meant this, you know, or, you know, you wrote this. I was talking to somebody once and they had said a beer name, and I just didn't ask them to spell it out, and I spelled it wrong. And they called me up and they're like, actually, it's this. And I was like, shit, sorry. And I corrected it immediately. Most places will correct things for you if you reach out, especially if you know who the person is. And that's why it's important to know who's running these websites, running the news stations, and all of that, because you don't want people showing up at 11 a.m. on the 29th when it's actually noon on the 30th. Like, you know, it's important to you as well. So, you know, sometimes it's uncomfortable to have to correct people, but in the case of what I do and my colleagues do, we want to be accurate. And you can also offer, if you're talking to reporters as well, of like, hey, if you want to run this past me before it runs up, you know, like I'm happy to take a look at it. I do that all the time. For a fact check. You know, somebody's like, oh, you know, like I really don't like that lead. It's like, well, then become a reporter and do it yourself. But like, as long as the facts are right, you know, that's what I'm caring about at that point. So, you know, having that firm conversation with folks where it's like, you know, if you have any follow-up questions, you know, if you want us to take a look at it before it goes up, you know, we're happy to do that because it's, you know, the accuracy is important to us. And then if people start screwing you over and over again, like they're just not, if they're playing fast and loose, then don't go to them anymore. And then also, again, goes back to your press releases, which are going into your emails, which are going on your social media, which is going on your website as well. Make sure that things are updated. Make sure that your information is accurate, because a lot of times people will just pull from your email and throw it right on their website as well. So, you know, make sure that your stuff is accurate. And then same thing on photos as well. If you have fresh photos for a beer that, you know, look really nice, make sure they're on the webpage. You know, make sure that you have a brand asset page on your website with your logo, with fresh photos, with staff photos, with, you know, anything that people need that aren't 10 years old. Because if they're getting something that's 10 years old, oftentimes they're getting it directly from you, you know, or something that they've had for a while and that hasn't been updated. So, you know, update your assets as often as possible. Mindful of time, I'm going to skip this one. Building community through social media really quick. Again, tell real stories. Feature your team, your customers, the moments that make your brewery unique. You know, if it's a last call and people have never seen Last Call and you ring a big bell or whatever it is, it's, you know, for those of you who aspire to make it to a, you know, a final night, this is what you hear. This is what you see. You know, it's Thursday and Tammy works the bar on Thursday, so come down and see Tammy and put that up at noon. You know, film it the week before and then hold on to it. You know, if like, you know, then there's Tammy saying, hey, y'all, I can't wait to see you later on today when we open at 5 and, you know, we're going to be pouring, you know, XYZ beers and come and hang out. You know, if you have a regular customer, you know, who comes in on your Wednesday release days, it's, you know, like, hey, Timmy, why do you come in every Wednesday? And it's like, oh, because I love Augie's videos and, you know, I want to tick off more beers on Untapped, like whatever it is, you know, feature real people. Again, share local content as well. You know, if a local team member hiked a local mountain, post about it. You know, did they bring the can to the top? Did customers going to Antarctica bring a can of yours with them and take a picture from the glacier? You know, post that kind of thing as well. And then, you know, your engagement in the community. If you guys are going to be at the chili cook-off, if you guys are going to be at the end of the local 5K, if you guys are going to be at that library fundraiser or, you know, whatever it is, you know, share that content and then work with other people's social media contents as well. You know, if the local library has their social media, make sure you're doing cross-promoted posts. Make sure that you're tagging folks. Make sure they're tagging you as well. Interactive content, polls, Q&As, behind the scenes, that kind of thing. Instagram's really big on that these days. You know, what's a beer of ours that we haven't had for a while that you'd like to see us brew? You know, engage people that way. It's also great focus grouping along the way. Or, you know, when you show up at our brewery, what's the first core beer that you always order? You know, like, do it that way because other people will see that as well. And then they're going to say, oh, I wonder why that pale ale, that American IPA is so popular. All that kind of thing. And then engage with your followers. Respond to comments, respond to DMs. If somebody's being an asshole, you don't have to engage. But if somebody wants to know, you know, like, hey, when is such and such coming back? Or, you know, is Tammy working this Thursday or whatever? Have somebody dedicated who has those things to just be like, yep, she's working, or yeah, we're going to have this beer on, or yeah, you know, tickets are still on sale for Oktoberfest. It takes a minute, but that personal connection through a fairly corporate, amorphous platform goes a long way. Yeah, so just engage with folks within reason. You know, if somebody's like, oh, you guys are woke and you suck, like, let them, let them do whatever they're going to do. Again, building community through social media, collaborate with local businesses, cross promote. We talked about this. Collaboration feature on Instagram and Facebook is really popular. The algorithm really likes that these days. So if you're doing stuff with the local food truck, make sure that you're tagging them that way and that they're tagging you that way. Same thing. Engage with other accounts. If you're on social media and there's a coffee shop down the street that you really like, even if you haven't brewed with their coffee or anything, but just like, hey, we stopped in this morning to a local coffee shop because great beer starts with great coffee and they have it, things like that. Or, just had great service down at the gas station or just whatever, especially if you're in a small town, that helps build community and it gets you out there as opposed to more of just like, hey, we have an American IPA. So yeah, share all of these things as well. Same thing when your vendors come through, when your suppliers and all of that, like, hey, had a great afternoon with Prairie Malt talking about XYZ, really excited about what's coming up, stay tuned, that kind of thing. So really quick, strategies for brewery events. Build the hype with a mix of engaging content. Videos go a long way. Hey, we're having our Oktoberfest on September 12th, and make sure you come on out and, get your lederhosen ready now. Start putting that out in July. Start getting people, really excited. Go behind the scenes a couple of days beforehand. Like, hey, we're doing this big fest and, here's all of the beer that we're going to be serving in the kegs and cans behind us, coming up. Or, like we the morning of, we just got, 50 pallets of ice in and everything's going to be cold and ready for you when you get here today. There's still tickets involved. Build the hype, get engaging content, show behind the scenes. And then again, if you're having collaborators, if you're having vendors there, make sure that they're promoting it in advance, but also you're promoting their presence as well. And I'm just banging through this fast. Utilize Facebook events. You can add the collaborators. I talked about this in Maine, so that's why it says what's happening in Portland. But, find out, what's on the Facebook local calendars, what's happening in your area as well. Make sure you're involved with all of that. Instagram has a countdown feature, which is kind of fun. And then make sure, I know you're running around during your fest, during your tap takeovers, during your anniversary parties. Make sure that somebody is walking around getting video, making sure that people are getting photos. I mean, I get lost at these things, and then the next day I'm looking at my phone, it's like, oh, I have one picture, and it's blurry of a beer, and I don't even know what this beer is, and I can't post on All About social media now. Have somebody who's dedicated to it, or a couple of people who know that that's part of their responsibilities for the day. Really quick, tapping into paid social, easy way to promote events. You can do boosting. It's great for event promotion, special releases, and brand awareness. If folks have more questions, you can email me later on and I can send this to you, but I know we're just up against it now. Again, target your geography. Make sure your town, your county, your state, whatever it is that you want to draw people from that are likely to come out. Set your audience. 21 targets is important for us right now. And then start small. Don't say, oh, I'm going to target 50,000 people. It's, try for 1,000, try for 500, and then build out from there. Rome wasn't built in a day. Beyond the likes, what to measure and why it matters. Awareness is reach and impression. Engagement is likes, comments, and saves. And audience is follower growth. All of your social media platforms have some kind of widget like this in there, so you can see if you're doing it right and if you're not. And then find out what works. If your beer release videos are dropping engagement, maybe stop doing them and try something else. If people really love your beer engagement videos, then maybe add on to them a little bit more, add something else to them. Meet people where they want to be. It's the same thing. If you start putting emails out and you're noticing a whole bunch of unsubscribes every time you put out, your Friday fish fry special or something, maybe stop doing that to stop losing people. Maybe that's just not what people want from you all. These analytic tools can be great. Don't live and die by them, but use them in the same way that like Untapped was helpful in the beginning, where it was like, wow, this one bar, our flagship has 3 bottle caps, but everywhere else it has 5. Maybe the problem is the bar. And then you'd go there and you'd help them clean their lines, and all of a sudden your numbers would go up. So, take things with a grain of salt, but think about them critically, but don't live or die by them. And then the last thing that I'll say is other ways to reach customers. Radio ads, right? They can be relatively affordable if you have small local radio stations. People are stuck in their cars. They're out and about. I know it might sound antiquated in an age of podcasts and all of that, but you can get a 30-second ad spot for your events, for whatever is going on, and get people interested. Like, hey, it's our Friday fish fry, and come on down to Brewery XYZ this Friday from 5 to 9 and have the best fish fry in the county. Like, whatever it is, to get people interested in an intimate setting. Same thing with billboards as well. Tampa Bay Beer Week just did a big campaign a couple weeks ago, and it worked out really well for them. Billboards are incredibly popular. If you've ever driven from Long Island, from the city up 95, and you pass by Two Roads in Connecticut, they have a billboard that says "Exit here for Two Roads Brewing," and it has been up since almost day one. And they say it's like, last time I checked, it was something like 10% of their spontaneous day business. People were just kind of coming through. And that pays money. That's people who otherwise would have driven past and never known that a brewery was there. If there's billboards near you guys, remind people, change it out. Our Oktoberfest is coming out. You want a lager, you want a fish fry, you want whatever. Use that local real estate. If there's a billboard that you drive past every day, why is somebody else using it to promote their business when you can be doing it for yours? And it's affordable. And then same thing, web ads on trusted sites. If there's local food blogs, if it's all about beer, if it's like, whatever it is, find places that you trust, that you visit, that you want people to know who you are. That you identify with this place, you want them to identify with you. Web ads are a pretty simple way of doing it. So if you haven't dropped your card in, like, last minute to do that right now, and then I'll pick some cards and we'll just give stuff away, and then everybody can go to a session. That's me. Be in touch. Thanks all. Whew.